The Legend of Zelda in a city builder. Two completely different topics that are often not mentioned in the same sentence, until now. In this video, I'm taking on the challenge of bringing the two worlds together in a whole new way. I'll be using city skylines to build a city in the shape of the series' most iconic design, the Triforce. But this isn't just about recreating the design. I'll also be incorporating profitable zoning spaces and services to create an efficient and functional city. So join me as I build Zelda's dream city and take your city building skills to the next level. This is my take on the Triforce town. First, I built a circle to enclose the Triforce using a radius of 2000. I used the dirt road's cost as a reference for distance and built a cross composed of 4 segments with a length of 2000 each. Plus 4 more additional segments using diagonals, which will serve as snapping points to make the round shape as close to a perfect circle as possible. The negative space between the circle and the Triforce itself will be used for a park that encompasses the entire city. I then moved on to build the main triangle that shapes the Triforce. I wanted the city to be above the park, as I thought it would be a cool way of adding contrast and depth to the entire piece. So I elevated the terrain and deleted certain parts of the circle. I also extended the reference points outside the circle as well, because I'll need them later. The top part was especially tricky because I needed that top point for the triangle, so I had to do some gymnastics to get that point into the elevated part. Building the perfect, equilateral triangle inside the circle was actually very easy. The central point of all 3 lines that make the triangle should be exactly at the same distance between the center of the circle and its perimeter. In this case, 1000, as the radius of the circle is 2000. Then I just had to extend the line until it touched the circle, connect it to the point at the top, and voila! We have the Illuminati Holy Cross of Jesus Christ, aka the main body of the Triforce. I then needed to reconstruct the circle segments that were deleted when the terrain was elevated. I wanted them to not connect to the corners of the triangle and instead go underneath the city through a tunnel. I terraformed that area quite a bit and then constructed the tunnels manually, trying to be as perfectly circular as possible. Most of it will be underground and won't be seen anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfect as long as the visible overground part looks good. I did the same for the other 2 corners and I had a complete circle again. I then built the 3 internal triangles that make up the Triforce. This part was also very easy as I just had to divide the height of the main triangle in half, which is a total of 1500 for both sides. I then built the remaining lines and the Triforce shape was done. After that, I planned out the main connection points that give access to the city. The town will have 3 outside connections, perpendicular to each side of the triangle. These roads will then connect to the regional highway. But that's not all. I also rebuilt the outgoing lines so that they all are at the set distance from the existing circle, as I needed them as guides to create an even bigger circle, which I will later turn into a lake. Is the lake really necessary? Yes, it will protect the city from moblins. Now for the access roads. The 3 of them will go over the lake, cut through the circle, aka the park, then go into a tunnel when they reach the Triforce and re-emerge in the middle, which then connect with each other in a roundabout. The roundabout will then have 3 additional roads that give access to each of the inside Triforces, or to each of the 3 main districts. Just like the outer circles, the roundabout was built with segments that all have the same length, and I converted it into a highway road to avoid those nasty traffic lights that kill your traffic flow. I upgraded all the main roads to avenues and built a road layout for zoning, where all buildings and services will be built, essentially. So all 3 districts will have the same road layout for zoning, which is basically 2 triangular rows. In other words, a small triangle inside a bigger triangle, inside the district triangle, inside the main triangle, inside the circle. And in the very middle of each district, everything connected with a triangular intersection. After I was done with one district, I moved on to the other two, and you'll see how building them gets much faster. I also provided access roads not only to the center of the Triforce, the busiest part of the town, but also to the outside. These will be useful to provide access to the park, as we will see next. I also didn't like how the middle intersection turned out, so I rebuilt the entire central area for all districts, and it looked much better. As mentioned, I used the outside roads of the main town to connect to the outer circle, providing more access to the park. I used the slope terrain tool, as the name suggests, to make smooth slopes between the elevated urban area and the park below, and built curved roads through them, connecting both areas. I also like how these turn out visually, as it helps break the strict shape of the triangle and create more fluidity between the triangle and the circle, making the whole piece more uniform and organic, while not entirely losing the contrast between both areas, which is an important element I want to keep for this build. While I was working on this, I also started a pathway network for the park on the elevated area. I focused especially on the corners of the Triforce. I don't want the elevated area to end at the sharp edge where the avenue angles, so I tried to build something cool, like a circular pathway, which will give access to other park areas in the elevated area, such as watchtowers and viewing decks, where people can enjoy the elevated view of the not at all monotonous park and lake that are yet to be built. After repeating the same process for the other three corners, I terraformed the elevated area quite a bit and tried to make more natural and organic edges. With the hardest part done, I then placed the essential services, going with wind turbines for power, as wind is quite strong in the elevated area, and incineration plants for garbage. Yes, I placed garbage in the park, I know, but the circle area will be segmented into service areas and park areas. And I will then cover everything with trees, tricking you to think the entire thing is a park, when in fact it is not. I actually put the water towers in the bottom area as well, enclosing them with a cool organic dirt pathway for maintenance. Instead of dumping the sewage in the lake like an uncivilized barbarian, I used one of those eco-inland water treatment plants, so we can recycle poop and turn it into fertilizer for the park. Trust me, we're gonna need it. It's a lot of trees. I then built the water pipe network and made it look cool. You know, according to the standard conventions of being under the roads and all that boring stuff. It's not really gonna provide any extra benefit here and no one's gonna see it, but I'm OCD like that. Okay, so now it's time to start working on the districts themselves. Initially, I wanted to have one district for each building type. You know, one triangle for residential only, another for commercial and another for industry, and I have each building type represent each of the Triforces and the qualities of the golden goddesses that themselves represent, namely power, wisdom and courage. Well, quite realistically, the game is not really balanced like that, and you cannot really make a functional city having the same zone space for all three types. So I balanced my zoning based on a few tests I've done before building this. I eventually changed this later in the video. I then define my district areas and I actually keep the initial naming strategy. The top triangle is the district of power, represented by the high-rise offices and tall commercial buildings. The bottom left triangle is the district of wisdom, where most people live and where the majority of schools are. And the bottom right triangle is the district of courage, represented by all the polluting industries and terrible work conditions, because you really gotta be courageous to work there, I'll tell you that. And then we let our first residents move in. With the main part of the town created and rolling, I defined the park area, which, for the sake of simplicity, will encompass the entire build, even though the majority of park buildings will be placed on very specific locations. I named it the Golden Goddess Park, the creators of Hyrule, and whose qualities are represented in the Triforce. Now for the park itself. I placed the main entrance on the elevated area on top of the southern avenue and built spaghetti-like pathways leading to the bottom side, where the park will essentially be. I connected everything together, built tunnels to avoid roads, provided some extra park entrances at the bottom, and created organic pathway layouts, where people can enjoy taking long quiet walks far away from the urban mess up top. When the main park infrastructure was defined, I then placed the park buildings, which consisted mostly of the city park spec buildings like plazas, coffee shops, public restrooms, playgrounds and gazebos. Then I started the most tedious task of this type of build, which involves planting trees, individually, one by one. Yeah. I need to buy a new mouse every couple of videos because of all the left clicking, so perhaps this is actually a good time for me to shamelessly pitch in and let you know how you can support my hardware requirements for these videos by sharing, liking or commenting below. Smiley face. Anyway, for the top part I wanted to create some contrast between the urban area and the bottom area, so I placed these pink trees that are vibrant and pop in your eyes. On the corners I placed some extra park buildings. The nature reserve lookout towers and viewing decks are perfect for this location, as I mentioned earlier. I spent a couple of hours doing this tedious task for the entire city, whose result you get in an instant due to the magic of editing. I then work on public transport. This is a small town of not even 10,000 people, so technically public transport is not really necessary. But I did add some bus lines in order to raise the land value so that buildings upgrade and the town gets higher income tax revenues. I did some rework on the district planning, mostly on the power district, by adding self-sufficient specialization to residential buildings for some variety, as well as the IT cluster for some high-rise that stands out. I also did some adjustments to the zoning by concentrating high-rise on the center of the office district and removing residential from the industrial district. I left the game running for a while to let the simulation adjust. After all that, I moved to the main intersection in the middle, starting by the pathway network. The layout is very geometric and symmetric for all three sides and, more important than that, it provides walkable access between districts thanks to the elevated triangular intersection in the middle. I also placed some park buildings in the middle for regular leisure next to the busy interchange, who wouldn't want that, and followed by planting those vibrant pink trees everywhere, making the central park an extension of the pink park on the edges of the Triforce. We'll come back to this later. You will notice how the game will start to look a bit different from this point, and that's because some workshop content got updated between recordings. And for whatever reason, the theme that I was using for this save file no longer looks the way it did before. And I have found no way to revert it back to what it was, even though the content that was updated on the workshop had nothing to do with the theme itself. Oh, you just gotta love playing this game with mods. I cleared the circular section because it was time to start working on the lake. I rebuilt the road segments that I wanted to be on solid land, but I left gaps in some areas. These will be completed with bridges that will go over the lake. I then dug out the lake with the terraform tool, and here I had to be particularly careful not to accidentally destroy the land extensions on top, which are already built and fully decorated with trees and buildings. I used a combination of both the level terrain and softened terrain tools, as well as several degrees of brush sizes and strengths to get the desired effect, and I completed the road segments with bridges. I then worked on filling out the lake with water, and for that I used the fresh water outlets, which come with the Natural Disasters DLC. These basically expel all the excess water your city produces and doesn't need, So I placed these in several places, as well as adding additional water towers to provide more water. I zoomed out and ran the simulation at max speed and enjoyed seeing my lake getting filled with water. Or at least that was the plan, but apparently the rate at which water evaporates is higher than a water expelling rate, so it was not really possible to fill the lake this way. I fixed this by raising the water level manually to the desired level with a mod. I encompassed the whole thing with trees and the masterpiece was pretty much complete. Or would be, because I later came down to change a couple of things I didn't like, such as the central intersection, for example. I thought it was a bit too pink and monotone when seen from up top, and it also didn't have a lot of depth. So, to fix this, I deleted the entire central area and sunk the roundabout to build it at a lower ground level, at the same height as the tunnels that connect to the outside highway. The other 3 avenues would then ramp up from the roundabout, leading to the 3 districts. I managed to rework the entire thing without touching the pre-built pathway networks and buildings, so it all turned out great. I also planted some green trees in the sunken area as well, just like on the external park to create some contrast with the pink. And after that, I was done. So this was my attempt at imagining and creating a small town in the shape of the Legend of Zelda's Triforce. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the result, as the city is self-sustainable and actually generates some profit. But let me know your thoughts. If you're still watching, I guess you enjoyed the video, so I might as well thank you for your time. I know I haven't uploaded a lot of videos lately. Life has kept me busy, as well as other hobbies in general. That said, I currently cannot commit to a long-term series with regular uploads. I do want, however, to keep making these types of videos, where I build entire cities from scratch. I think this is unique and creative content. This was also the first time I've made a video like this with commentary, so let me know how you feel about that as well. But anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for sticking around, and have fun!